A young woman who wanted to become the best version of herself sought the help of a renowned hypnotherapist. Yet, after several intense sessions, she unknowingly uncovered deadly outcomes. The hypnotist was using her mind as a puppet in a fatal game. The following recap is what unfolds in the 2021 thriller film titled Hypnotic. Andrea Bowen is working late and struggling with claustrophobia, frantically calls Detective Wade Rollins, who is involved with her case. She enters an elevator and receives a phone call from an unknown caller, which she assumes is Rollins. However, the man on the other end of the line says, "This is how the world ends," causing Andrea to panic and think that the elevator walls are closing in on her. She dies from a heart attack. Jenn Thompson goes to a housewarming thrown by her friend Gina Kelman and Gina's husband Scott, only to be dismayed to find her ex-fiancé Brian Raleigh is also there. Gina introduces her to Dr. Meade and suggests she get counseling from him to get over her former fiancé and sort out her life. They all sit down together, chatting away before Dr. Meade asks Jenn what she does for a living. Brian says she is a professional software engineer, and the doctor finds that truly impressive. Just then, Jenn stops Brian from eating something, asking if it has sesame oil in it. Brian says he is allergic to sesame. Dr. Meade then gets up and walks over to Jenn before leaving, handing her his business card on the way out. Outside, Brian tells Jenn he can't stop thinking about her before offering her a lift home. We all know how that ends. The next day, Jenn and Gina have lunch. Jenn opens up about how she and Brian spent the night together, but there is no chance she will let him back in her life. Gina urges her one more time to see Dr. Meade, saying that all the crap in her life has created a whirlpool and Jenn needs some therapy. At her appointment with Dr. Meade, Jenn reveals that she and Brian had been engaged, but after the miscarriage, they couldn't make it work and drifted apart. Meade queries if she had ever tried hypnotherapy and then encourages her that her subconscious mind is in her control, making it a reliable source of healing for those who have faced trauma. He speaks of his mentor, Dr. Xavier Sullivan, who taught him all he knows. Following this discussion, they proceed with a session of hypnosis therapy, whereupon Jenn can't recall anything from the dream once she awakes. Jenn continues seeing Meade on a weekly basis for several months, although nothing she experienced under hypnosis sticks with her. That night, as she is sleeping, she has a dream that features Dr. Meade but decides not to bring it up. She runs into him the next day while out. He requests to celebrate her new job, and they decide to grab coffee together. During the outing, Meade opens up, revealing that he had been married to the love of his life, Amy, before she passed away. Then he changes topics and brings up Brian. He suggests that Jenn should invite him over for dinner so that she can heal from their broken relationship, which she eventually does. Jenn arrives at the grocery store to collect dinner ingredients, and while walking from her car, she gets a phone call that renders her unconscious. When she regains consciousness, she finds herself in the dining room while Brian is lying helplessly in her bathroom due to an allergic reaction. She snaps out of it when she notices Brian and swiftly injects him with epinephrine before dashing to the hospital for a long recovery process. She decides to visit Dr. Meade, who inquires as to how Brian is doing, then says that when doubts start to creep in, that's when fear takes over, and it's important for her to trust him and keep going. That night, Jenn has another dream about kissing Dr. Meade, making her curious. She starts piecing together that he subconsciously suggested she poison Brian with sesame oil. She then follows up on this with online research and finds out about the criminal complaint Andrea Bowen filed against Meade before she died. Jenn visits Gina and shares her revelation. She has also done some investigating and learns that, other than his office, there is no sign of Dr. Meade having any other residents or employees, essentially making him a ghost. She hands Gina the receipt from the grocery store when she had invited Brian over for dinner and reveals what happened, making Gina realize that maybe Meade is taking advantage of and killing his patients. They discuss their suspicions with the detective working on Andrea's case, and Jenn brings up that something unusual is going on, as well as her strange dreams, which Wade backs up by providing them with surveillance footage of Andrea having a hallucination in the elevator. As they leave, Gina panics because she has also recently gone through hypnosis with Dr. Meade. Jenn returns to Meade to surreptitiously record a hypnotic session, which only reveals that Meade is aware of her plan to accuse him of Andrea Bowen's death. Jenn quickly contacts Gina with an urgent warning that Meade has realized they are onto him. In her car with Scott as a passenger, Gina disregards Jenn's plea and takes another call from Meade. On the phone, he triggers Gina's arachnophobia by stating that this is how the world ends. Immediately, Gina starts to visualize a tarantula in her lap and hysterically screams for Scott to remove it. She steps on the gas, runs through a red light, and smashes the vehicle, resulting in her and Scott's death. Wade pops into Meade's office to dive deeper into the deaths of his patients and informs him that Gina had perished in a car crash earlier that day. Meade is taken aback, and Wade slyly slips a spoon that Meade handled into his pocket. He starts to confront him with documents linking more fatalities to female patients who share comparable physical traits. As he is getting ready to leave, Meade offers to make an exception if Wade needs any hypnotherapy. The detective then goes to Jenn's place to further investigate what occurred. Jenn informs him that when they were at the station, Meade followed them. Wade relates that Andrea had just asked the doctor some questions before she passed away. He tells Jenn to stay out of sight while he runs his fingerprints to see if they are missing anything. Just after Wade has left, there is a knock on the door. Jenn expects it's the detective again, but instead Meade appears. He verbally freezes her for a moment, then taunts her before leaving. She hurriedly grabs her phone to try and reach Wade, but it goes straight to voicemail. Meade hypnotizes Tabby, causing her to attack Wade in his own home. Wade is left with serious injuries from defending himself. At Wade's suggestion, Jenn visits Dr. Stella Graham to determine what Meade planted in her head. After putting her in a hypnotherapy session, Dr. Graham discovers Meade has put a fail-safe in place, making his subconscious triggers too strong to get rid of. During her session with Dr. Graham, Jenn experienced convulsions, but she still managed to recall the address of a building she had seen while hypnotized. Before departing from Graham's office, she hypnotized her one last time to put a counter-trigger in her head. If Meade ever called her "my love," it would nullify all the triggers planted previously. She returned to her apartment and traced the address to Dr. Xavier Sullivan, as mentioned by Meade before. Additionally, she found out he had been involved in MKUltra mind control experiments during the 1960s. Jenn calls Wade to inform him she is going to meet Dr. Sullivan, but Wade attempts to convince her not to go alone. Still, Jenn insists they don't have enough time and that perhaps he knows something that may help with the investigation. Whilst at Sullivan's home, she comes across Meade when noticing the same dress from her dreams being worn by a woman in a photograph. Meade states Sullivan was his father, who left him the inheritance, and utters a verbal command that places Jenn into a slumber. At this point, Wade discerns Jenn is in peril when discovering the fingerprints from the spoon he had stolen earlier belonged to Julian, who is Sullivan's son. Despite his pain, Wade pushes himself out of his hospital bed in order to rescue Jenn. Jenn wakes up from the sleep command, and upon calling Wade, he inquires about her whereabouts. He then dispatches a team to Meade's office, and they arrive before him only to find it empty. In the wake of this misguided raid, Wade realizes that Meade wanted Jenn to call him, so he radios over requesting Sullivan's address. Back at Sullivan's house, Jenn discovers that the dreams she was having were actually memories implanted by Meade in order to reshape Jenn into her dead wife Amy, something he had previously attempted but failed with other patients. Wade sneakily sneaks into Meade's house, and just as he enters, the door slams shut, startling Meade and waking Jenn due to his command. But with immense determination, Jenn breaks free from the hold he had on her. She steps out and discovers the two men in a fight. Wade urges her to grab the gun while Meade orders her to sleep. Fighting against Meade's sleep command, she seizes the gun and shoots at them before she passes out. Jenn regains her senses in Wade's embrace, only to discover that it was yet another mental prompting from Meade. As Meade refers to her affectionately as "my love," Dr. Graham's remedy takes effect, and Jenn is able to break free from the hypnotic state. She quickly locates Wade, who in turn directs her to his ankle gun before shooting Dr. Meade dead as reinforcements arrive. After a month, Jenn is able to return to her everyday life and expresses a deep wish for Brian to wake up from his coma. If you enjoyed this recap, please leave a like and don't forget to subscribe to the channel.